Are you a leader, manager, entrepreneur, business owner, or knowledge worker? Are you leading people or wondering how to be a better leader in your own life and work? If you are, then you can be experimenting better. Welcome to The Experimental Leader, a podcast that takes a look at the ways leaders are experimenting in their own work. Hosted by Melanie Parrish, we dive into real-life conversations about how people might be using a scientist's mindset and experimenting in their work. Shift your leadership into something that works better. Join us on The Experimental Leader today.
Hello, everyone. I'm Melanie Parrish, and I'm one of the co-hosts of the Experimental Leader podcast. Hi, Mel.
Hi, I'm Mel Rutherford. I'm the other co-host.
Well, I'm super excited to be here today. And I was thinking, I went to the Collision Conference in Toronto a couple of weeks ago, and I went with our son. And our son is pretty sure, he's 18 years old, and he's pretty sure that he's hacked networking. So I've been thinking about that today. And I've been thinking about sort of in leadership, like, you know, what's the purpose of LinkedIn? What's the purpose of networking? What's the purpose of creating sort of collegial relationships with people that you don't see that often? And I'm thinking about him. It's such an obvious line because he's starting computing and finance management at Waterloo in the fall. And so he knows he's going to have 6 co-ops over the next 5 years. So he's trying to create relationships so that he can get hired as a co-op student, which is actually pretty easy because people that is such a clear sort of relationship. Like, people are excited about co-op students, and he's excited about them and all the possibilities. So that's so linear. But I was thinking about it for me and for my clients, like, you know, what does it mean to network as you get more senior in your career? And so I've just been sort of pondering that. I don't have any brilliant answers other than connections are really useful for context, especially like when things go bad. Like if you're trying to create credibility, if you have a boss that doesn't work out well, or if you have something, you know, then you have connections and you never know who's going to join your organization or who's going to come into your circle where a connection might be really useful. So that's just what I'm thinking about in my leadership today. What are you thinking about?
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, Melanie. I was just reflecting yesterday about networking. Seems like a lot of work when things are going well, but when things are not going well, that's when you notice that you've got your networks and you can really lean into your networks. What I was thinking about this week was leadership across different domains. I've had a lot of leadership experience in academia now. Originally, a lot of my leadership training came from my religious community, and I think that the best practices and the approach to leadership in academia and religious communities and even in government contrasts with business leadership, because in academia and in a religious community, even in government, you're really there to serve the people you're leading, and you can really lean into listening and hearing the values and hearing the goals and really organize your leadership around the goals of the people that you're leading. Whereas in contrast, in business, who are you serving? You're serving the owner or shareholders who really require you to create a profit. So you still want to engage in a lot of listening and think about incentivizing, but you're not serving the people that you're leading. And the reason that contrast is important, I think, is because if we're in academia or another context, I think a lot of people where I am are reading leadership books that come out of business. I think you just want to be aware of that contrast. Like, I'm not here to make a profit. I'm here to listen to what people in my department want to be doing, and then help facilitate those goals and dreams.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I've heard the term social profit, applied to, organizations that are trying to serve a common good as opposed to profit. So the profit isn't financial; it's social. There's social profit in some way, and I can see how academia is that. And I think that's really interesting. And in those organizations, often there's two groups that you're serving. You're serving sort of the mission, and you have the opportunity to serve the people that are working in your organization, to develop them, to grow them, to create positive careers for them, which I think it's a sad comment. I think it's sad that we have decided as a society that the most profit is the way to measure success in business, especially if there's shareholders. Because I think there's a middle ground where it's not, you can also serve the people that work in the organization. But I know that that CEOs and boards often believe that the highest profit is what they serve. And I actually question that assumption a lot. But now we're getting super theoretical.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm super excited about our guests today. We are really honored to have Chris Romulo. He's a retired Muay Thai champion. He's a youth empowerment speaker and author, and he's joining us through his Champ Up philosophy. Chris has transformed the lives of thousands of students, teaching them mindfulness and determination. Get ready to be inspired as we delve into his incredible journey to learn how he empowers youth with his Champions Uprising curriculum. Welcome, Chris. We're so excited to have you on our show.
Thank you, Melanie, and thank you, Mel, for having me here. I'm honored. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, so I'm super curious, just to start out, how are you experimenting in your life and work right now?
How am I experimenting? So I would say through the 55 schools that I've spoken to over the past school year, the experimental process of going in and speaking and sharing my message, you get to understand, you guys are talking about leadership, and what I've learned through doing my best as a leader is learning to understand the kids and understand what the challenges that they're going through, and hearing, questions from kids that are going through challenges, and experimenting with, understanding and how to respond to these challenges that they're going through each and every presentation that I would deliver, throughout the school year. So I would say that is, the audience and the auditorium, or even the gymnasium, any gymnasium that I've spoken in, that was the laboratory of experimenting with the philosophy and the thoughts and how that resonates with the kids.
Well, I think it's amazing because with 55 iterations and an audience as a feedback loop, that's almost a perfect experiment.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm guessing you found yourself responding. I know I respond as a speaker. You get nods of heads and you start to do more of that, and you start to respond to the audience. So you improve through direct feedback, which is something that with our experiments, we so rarely get. We don't get people, viewing them and giving us feedback on thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs up, thumbs down all the time. So that's really interesting.
Chris, what does it mean to champ up?
So my definition of champ up is that we are all champions. We are all in this fight of life. And the real fight is not against the things that are happening outside of us. The real fight is against what I call the 7 dictators, right? The 7 dictators of our emotions and our mind. And to champ up is to accept that challenge, right? To accept how you want to battle these dictators and move on and persevere in life. Because it's, talking to the kids and having adults at these presentations, it's absolutely apparent that, we all face these dictators, and, they don't, what I like to tell the kids is they don't go away. We don't overpower them and get rid of them. We learn how to be aware of them. And then when they show up, we can make a choice or make a decision on how we want to respond.
Can you tell us about the 7 dictators?
Yeah. So the 7 dictators are self-doubt, fear, disappointment, hardship, confusion, our ego, and our self-talk. Those are the dictators that try to control us on a daily, even a minute by minute basis.
Mm.
And how did the kids respond when you tell them to champ up?
I mean, they to again, like whenever I hold a Q&A session afterwards, like the questions that I get are so profound. Actually, there was one specific example where we were talking about self-doubt, and I always ask, what is self-doubt? And this one 5th or 6th grader had this profound answer of self-doubt is when you don't trust yourself. Coming from a 5th or 6th grader, that was just amazing to me. So their response is great. They're obviously they're thinking about what the message is, that it's not against the bullies, all right. The physical aspect of bullying is detrimental, but obviously it's not just about the bully. It's about how we're internalizing situations that happen in school or in our lives. And I feel like they are internalizing it themselves and trying to understand it. And that is super gratifying.
Mm. What does it mean to be a Muay Thai champion?
Well, Muay Thai is the national sport of Thailand. It's a form of kickboxing. And I got involved in that sport pretty, as far as its popularity here in the United States, I would say early on in the 90s back in New York. And to be a champion of Muay Thai is, one of the most amazing feelings in the world, considering, how I grew up, where I was the scared and confused and kid that was full of self-doubt and fear and basically letting, the dictators control me. So to go through that journey of, training and becoming an amateur and eventually becoming a professional, it was, the epitome of what it means to champ up, I believe.
Mm. How do you walk down the street differently because of that experience?
I would say, again, looking back on my childhood, I didn't have a lot of confidence. And now the confidence I have, it's not, I wouldn't say it's overinflated confidence. I would call it confidence through competence, meaning not just because I can physically handle myself in a situation, but knowing that not only did I develop myself physically through the art and the training and the competing of Muay Thai, but mentally and spiritually, I've developed an internal strength that I can carry with me, for as long as I live. So I would say, yeah, confidence through competence it's how I carry myself.
I'm wondering if there's a if champing up is is champing up a decision that somebody makes, and is there something, are there circumstances that are required before somebody can make that decision?
So yeah, in my presentations, the way I help kids understand how to battle the dictators, I talk about, or I share the ABCs of deciding to live like a champion. And yeah, so I would say the ABCs, the A is accepting reality, accepting your reality. We're all going to face challenges in our life and, setbacks or hardships. But the main thing is to accept what we have in front of us and not wish that it would go away, but say, okay, how can I take one more step forward in my life, no matter what? So that would be the first part of the decision. The second part, become your dream. And I know there were times in my life where I didn't focus on my dream, things, I made decisions that weren't the best for me. So when you can become your dream by deciding that you have one, or understanding that you have one and envisioning that every single day, that's how you can become your dream and not let, again, the outside forces overpower us, right? So focusing on your dream, I call it, when you have a dream, I call it having that lighthouse on the shore. When you're out in the dark storm, you at least have that guiding force, pu- you know, leading you towards, what you want is to find yourself coming out of that dark storm. So your dream can be your salvation. Okay.
Mm.
And C would be the third part would be changing the way you think, right? And they really get this, because after talking about self-talk and how our thoughts dictate, whether it's destructive self-talk or constructive self-talk, dictate our actions. When you understand how to change the way you think, that will be the anchor in deciding how you want to move forward, or how you want to decide to live as a champion.
How do you think about things like racism, sexism, homophobia, the things that are sort of external pressures, marginalization, privilege, as you put together your talks, as you work with kids?
So, in my opinion, I would say those things are always going to be a part of humanity, and it's, obviously we want to do our best as a society to curb and rid ourselves of injustices. But what it all boils down to is our response. I like to think of my philosophy based on stoicism, where we can't control the things outside of us. I mean, we can do our best to speak up and have a voice about the things that are the injustices that are happening outside of us. But when it all boils down to it, it's how are we going to internalize, think about, change our thoughts, in turn to change our thoughts and our feelings and emotions, which will lead to our actions. So that's how I feel about the injustices of society. It's unfortunate, but the concept of fall 7 times, stand up 8. We're going to get knocked down. We are going to get knocked down in life multiple times, right? Whether it's racism, whether it's, again, and any of those injustices that you mentioned. But it's how can we decide to take one more step forward towards what we want in life?
I have this feeling, as you say, you get knocked down, that you've had, this experience as a champion. You've been knocked down more than most. So it resonates differently for me when you say that as a metaphor. It's interesting.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And yeah, definitely it's happened many times in training and in the ring. But, thinking about it, all those knockdowns or those setbacks, all it did was prepare me for the knockdowns of life, and going into a lot of the presentations I gave over the past year, we talked about, or we touched upon the setback of COVID-19 and what that did to society and the world. And again, we had no control over that. I mean, yes, we had control in a sense that, okay, we could, do the things that were going to keep us safe as individuals, but we had no control over what that virus was, doing, as what viruses do. They spread. So it was up to us to say, okay, what can I do to make sure that I'm doing making the best decision for myself, my family, and my community.
I did some work with kids this year, and one of the most profound sessions I had with them, it was a sports team, was talking about what they lost during COVID.
Mm.
And I think anyone who's working with university age kids, those kids are coming out of high school, having had so many losses. And I think adults had ways to talk about it. And I'm not sure the kids had the skills or the forums or the relationships that were deep enough to talk about those losses in a really real way. So I can almost get teary just thinking about that work of, we all had losses, but I know I processed them pretty well, and my clients processed them really well with me. And I got tired, but I didn't feel unprocessed by the end of it all. I knew what was happening. I knew what my emotions were, but I think the kids really it wasn't something we've taught kids to do. To process emotions over an event like that. I mean, I think we send therapists in if there's, a tragedy in a school, but this was a societal happening. So we didn't give them many resources to process those feelings.
I completely agree with you. I would boil it down to what we have, hopefully as adults, not every adult, but we have the emotional maturity. Right. And kids, unfortunately, don't have that maturity, but I guess that's my mission, to help them understand and the thing about the dictators, those are feelings and emotions, self-doubt and fear and disappointment, and if they can be aware of these things as early as possible, that might give them a better chance for when that hardship kicks in life. And how can you be vocal about it? How can you reach out? How can you say, "Oh, I need help"? Because, for me as a fighter for a long time, I didn't ask for help. With the fighter mentality, you think, okay, I can do this all on my own. I don't need help. All right. Yes, you have coaches and training partners to help you, but the fighter mentality sometimes is restrictive. It's a fixed mindset. Like, I can figure this out on my own. But after I retired, I learned that the fighter mentality, it's not perfect. It doesn't work for life necessarily, in a way of reaching out for help, communicating that I have emotions that I need to express and I need to learn how to manage it and handle. So, yeah, I definitely agree that it's important that the youth have an outlet for their emotions and feelings in some way or shape or form.
Chris, what's your favorite age to work with?
I would say the middle schoolers. And when I go into a talk, I specifically, in my mind, I think about talking to the 14-year-old boy that I was, where I didn't have a father figure in my life. And I was, again, being controlled by these 7 dictators. And so I go in there thinking, okay, there's at least one kid in this audience who's feeling the way I used to feel. And if I can speak to that one kid and hopefully reach and connect with that kid, that's mission accomplished.
What's your dream for the next couple of years?
My dream is to be more my outreach with the Champa message, to reach out to middle schoolers, high schoolers, and eventually I actually had this thought earlier in the week, which was, starting a non-for-profit where I work with kids, again, that are what I've termed going through father trauma, and who could be facing, who potentially could be making decisions that are leading them down the wrong, I don't like to say wrong, but leading them in a direction that's self-destructive. And I want to help those kids, make sure that, they're aware of the 7 dictators. They can build values. They can, understand that this is, if you don't have a father figure in your life, or a toxic father figure in your life, that doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It's not your fault. That's just an unfortunate circumstance, but there's a way around it. Because I said this to somebody last week, because of what I went through, I should have been a statistic, right? Whether it was in jail, dead, drugs, alcohol, whatever. I should have been one of those statistics, but luckily I didn't. I made some decisions that led me down a more constructive path, and I want to make sure that I'm that guy, that lighthouse for any other 14-year-old or any other youth that might be, lost.
It's really inspiring, what you're doing. You have a book out as well. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, actually, that book is more of a memoir, and I'm working on a second book right now. But the book is called Champions Uprising, and I self-published that in 2017, and it's just a little bit more about my story. And again, I feel like anybody that would read it would definitely be inspired by the challenges. Sometimes fighters talk about their accolades, but I really share and I get as vulnerable as possible about all the times that I've failed, but I was able to bounce back and still, be here to talk to you guys.
And where can people find that book?
That book is on Amazon right now.
Okay.
That's great. And where can people find you?
So I'm on Instagram. It's chris.romulo.com. I also have a website. Actually, I just put up a quiz for anybody that would like to go to my website. It's chrisromulo.com /quiz. And it would help you determine your champion archetype. And I feel like there are 3 champion archetypes. And the quiz would actually, the questions are based around the 7 dictators. And it would determine whether you are an awakened champion, a tenacious champion, or an empowered champion. So yeah, you can definitely, I'd be grateful if you went there and checked that out and took the quiz.
That's great. And where do you speak?
Right now, I've done most of my talks in Brooklyn and Queens, New York. I live in Jersey now, so I'm looking to do more talks here in my home state, and I'm open to speaking at conferences and anywhere where I could potentially connect with the youth.
Amazing. Thank you
Great.
so much for being on the show today. It's been a pleasure to have you. And
Thanks for talking with us.
being here.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time, and I love what you're doing with the experimental leader. I mean, it is. I like to think of being a champion as being a leader, right? Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And if you can live your life as a champion, you are definitely a leader.
Thanks so much for that.
Thank you, guys.
If you'd like to get a digital copy of my book, The Experimental Leader, Be a New Kind of Boss to Cultivate an Organization of Innovators, you can go to www.book.experimentalleader.com and you can get your very own copy for just $4.95. I want this book in your hands, so I've made it really cost effective so that you can start reading it right away. Go now so you can get started today and start to systematically improve your own leadership.
It was so great to have Chris here today. And I love his idea of the 7 dictators. I think it's so interesting. I've done work a lot in coaching around just the voices that are in people's heads. And sometimes I think of it as the committee in your head, but I like the idea of the dictator and sort of silencing the dictator, because you want to make sure you're driving your own ship as a leader and steering your own ship as a leader. So I really love what he's up to, helping youth. It's so important that we help our kids start to be the people they want to be in the world. It's been great being here with you today. Go experiment.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of The Experimental Leader. We hope you have found value in today's episode, because we're dedicated to helping you become the experimental leader you want to be. To access the show notes or learn more about working with Melanie, visit melanieparish.com. Go experiment.